Welcome back to This is Gravel, year number 10, Neil. We are in the Gravel Guru studio today recording an audio podcast. How have you been?
I've been great. 10 years, I guess. I've only been here for 8 of them now, but it's wild to think that we are sitting here again in February of 2025, getting ready to talk to folks about what's been going on and talk a little bit about gravel.
Well, I guess on the bright side, it's been a while, so there should be some things to talk about.
Yeah, we kind of just disappeared last year a little bit, and it happened for reasons, and we'll talk about a little bit of that, I'm sure, probably today. But it has been a while. I think the last thing that we talked about was when I went up and rode 200 miles in Michigan across the state back in June, I want to say it was, end of June.
Wow.
But life got busy. It got busy for both of us. Definitely some big changes, I would say, that have gone in both of our lives over that time. And so we're back.
We're still live.
We're still here. Yeah.
We still ride bikes.
Kind of.
Sort of.
Yeah.
We rode light bikes last night.
We
That's
did
what
ride
matters.
bikes. Yeah, we rode bikes last night, so probably rode bikes more recently than most people listening, right?
Probably not.
Probably
No.
not, yeah. Swift doesn't count.
I agree. I actually went in last night when we got done.
Yeah.
And I canceled my Zwift subscription.
Wow. How many times have you used Swift this year?
So I canceled my subscription. That $19.99 a month or whatever that comes through in your email, and every time you're like, man, why am I paying for this? And this was not the topic of the podcast, actually, to be clear.
Okay.
But truly, it's one of those deals where, like, I think I've rode Zwift once this entire winter since we last recorded a podcast.
Yeah, I've been on, I don't know, usually about 3 to 4 times a month, just occasionally, but...
If I was training for an event, I'm sure I would be on it. If I had a goal set for something. But the other side is, yes, this February and January has been really cold and wet here in
Awful.
Kansas.
Terrible.
But at the same point, we still have pretty fringe weather where there's some good days to get out and ride bikes, and we both have the winter attire. I've got the thermal bibs. But
I'll say of the winters we've had since I've been in Kansas, at least, I'd say this is probably ranks up there amongst one of the harshest, coldest, kind of longest lasting. I mean, for January, we did a basketball game on the 4th of January when it was icing.
And an ice storm.
And we didn't have fully clear side streets in Emporia till my wife's birthday, which was the 29th, 25 days later. I mean, it was a wild January for sure. But
yeah, and when you talk about us doing a basketball game, we'll get into those details later on. That'll all make more sense here in a little bit. Neil and I were not playing basketball. Let's be clear on that.
Speak for yourself.
It's all of our height.
Yeah.
So
tall.
Yeah. But anyways, a lot going on. Enjoying bikes, and I think for me, a big thing that's been hard is most people know I left the bike shop at the beginning of May, and just trying to rediscover when you do something for work and when you do something for pleasure, mentally it's hard to separate the two and figure out where what do you enjoy. And for me, I kept telling myself all summer, going through June, July, August, and I rode most of the summer. I think I still got 3,000 miles last year. But how do you maintain that? And quite frankly, winter fell, and I did what I kept telling myself I wasn't going to do. I just parked the bike and didn't touch it.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize. I mean, I've encountered this with other friends that have been in the bike industry, working in shops, and it really sucks. I would say it seems like it sucks a lot of the desire to sometimes just hop on the bike because you're around it all the time. And for you, I mean, like we talked about, this is 10 years of doing the podcast. People don't realize sometimes how far back really your connections with cycling go, because gravel still for a lot of people is pretty new, which is weird to say, but I think it still is for a lot of people. Really, I mean, when I say new, I'm talking less than 5 years.
Well, and to be clear, when Gravel Guru started, we weren't new to gravel.
No.
I mean, we'd been doing it for 5 years at that point, and I'd been covering it through the media. I think 2010 was the first time I covered, at that time, DK.
15 years ago.
Wow.
2010. 15 years ago.
I'm only 20. How can I have done that?
You're only 20, right? Add another 10 to that.
32 next week, Wow.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you think about that, though. I mean, 15 plus years you've been surrounding yourself in some form or fashion, whether it's been the news side of things with the newspaper here, out doing live streams back before people, for the most part, knew what live streams even were, it seems like, to then beginning this, and really late 2015, early 2016 was the first episode, to going and managing a bike shop, going and doing some of your own events, out there, riding 150 miles up in Gravel Worlds, going down doing Mid-South.
Don't forget that hot virtual 150 we did.
Oh gosh, that was the worst. I don't even want to. That amongst other things that we've done are sometimes the ones that I want to forget. There are some things that I definitely want to forget that we've done.
See, the day ended up better for me than it did you.
Yeah, it didn't help that I jumped on the bike that day, though, dealing with poison ivy.
Yeah, I think that was your big thing.
Body, basically.
And we rolled out, for people that didn't pay attention to us 5-7 years ago.
Back in 2020. It was 2020. COVID time. Yeah.
So 4 years ago, Neil and I got invited. They were doing almost like an influencer weekend takeover for Gravel Worlds when it had to go virtual. Jason and them asked us to do a virtual 150, and we did it on Instagram. And
we were like the week after Allison Tetrick, just saying.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah. We're on the same level.
Totally, 100%.
Shout out to Allison on that one. But it was a hot August day. I think we rolled out at 4:30 in the morning or something.
Yeah, 4:30 in the morning.
Trying to beat the heat. Gorgeous morning, though. Do you remember that
fantastic
sunrise out there in the Flint Hills?
Fantastic day.
We were somewhere out there south of the cattle pens, just watching the sun come up. And not the sunrise you see like on the way to work. This is that light way out there on the horizon with just a sliver, just watching it grow.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful start. And I mean, I think we had the right route and we had everything planned pretty well.
It was a fantastic route. You did a good job putting that 150 miles together.
And it got hot. And when it got hot, my body, again, was already fighting this. I had, again, for folks that don't remember way back then or weren't with us, I had poison ivy across my hands, across my chest, down on my stomach. And I'd been fighting it for probably about a week leading up to that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can do this. Sure. No big deal. And I was good for the first 100 miles. And then it got bad really quick.
Yeah.
And of course the heat came with that portion. I mean, we were up over, the heat index was up over 110 that day.
Yeah.
It was bad.
And the wind was bad.
Yeah. And
which is typical when the heat comes up in August in Kansas, the wind is typically carrying it.
Yeah, and so anyway, we did that. That was a wild day. But anyway, my point is my point to where all that came is that you've been around all of this in a lot of different ways, and I think, at least what I've noticed, and in myself as well, there's been a little bit of overload, I would say, for us over the last 3 or 4 years, especially like post-COVID, where it seems like
the industry has changed.
A lot of things have changed over these past 4 or 5 years, and some for the good, some for the bad. But it has definitely, I would say, impacted us as we move forward through the year when it comes to doing the podcast. I mean, I did things after Coast to Coast last year. I went up and I did I did Dust Bowl up in Indiana. Had a great time there. Went out to Trinidad, Colorado. Had a miserable time in the mountains because I found out I couldn't breathe when I got above 8,000 feet. So I had a tough go out there, but did other things. But we were just gonna say it, I was wore out. I mean, you can see it sometimes just on or social media. Like I'll post things, but a lot of times I'm not as regular as I used to be because I don't want to take the pictures. I don't want to talk
Sometimes
about
you
it.
just want to ride a bike.
I want to put my phone in my back pocket and turn on an audiobook and kind of just spin my legs. And so I would say that there's been a big focus change for us. But having said that, I also think, too, we have heard from enough of you guys, whether it be at events, whether it be just through social media, that have said, hey, we still just love to hear what you guys are doing, what you guys are up to, and what's going on. And so hopefully we're just going to, I think, share a little bit of that.
I think we'll get into that here a little bit later on what's coming. I think we're in a good place.
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about a little bit, we've talked history here, going into year 10, which is hard to believe. I remember going down to, we launched the show in March of 2016 and loading up Madeline, my wife, and we'd only been married for not that long at that point, type deal in our own house here in Emporia. But going down one camera, Mid-South was not a very big event at that time.
Nope.
And covering it and not really knowing what Gravel Guru was going to be at that point. It was Leland Danes and Bobby Thompson hosted the show back then. And as we were getting ready for the show, I pulled up the video number 1 and Bobby's kids were in it because we did a walking through the mud clinic in the video type deal. And just learning that. And, it's hard because you go back and in that first episode, there's a lot of people involved in it. It was kind of a town hall conversation almost of the people back then. And not a lot of them are necessarily involved anymore. Lives have changed. People have kids, people have grandkids, that were in those. I can't I used to not necessarily understand how hard it was to go ride your bike for all these people that have kids. And now that I have a 3-year-old that last night when it was riding, she rode down the street next to me on my way to meet you for a ride. Just a very different thing. So, it's exciting. But Neil, what have you been up to kind of since, I guess, coast to coast? How's life been?
It's been good. Like I said, I did a couple other things. Went and did Dust Bowl out in Indiana. Kind of just took a week to get away. Went up to Chicago for a day, and probably not even full 24 hours, and did 2 bike rides out in the suburbs of Chicago with buddy Rusty. We got together and did that, and then he actually came down to Dust Bowl and rode that as well. So that was cool. Had a really good time just enjoying Indiana. It is a fast race up there for sure. I came in around 6 hours and 50 minutes. I can't remember the exact time. But it went great. I mean, I was very happy with how it went. And then, like I say, I came back and I was looking at the rad off in the distance. I had the opportunity from Tailwind to be able to go out to Trinidad, Colorado and take on the rad. And honestly, the entire first portion of the race went fantastic. But as I got up above, into the mountains, up above really 8,000, then when we got up to 9,000 feet, I just kind of lost all abilities. I'd never ridden at elevation before. I'd never done anything at elevation before. And I mean, I could have dragged on and maybe found my way back to
I think people
town.
have to understand that where we come from here in Kansas, if you've never been out here for an event or to ride with us or whatnot, that we're at like 1,200 feet.
Yeah. No, Kansas is a pretty
And a 100-foot increase in a hill is a big hill here.
Yeah, and I mean, again, there was some climbing, and I was doing pretty good through a lot of it.
So
really
acclimation's not a real thing for us here.
Yeah, I felt really pretty good, and then it was amazing. It disappeared, and my ability to put out power disappeared, and everything disappeared. And the reality is that I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I really, really, really let my overall fitness go last year. It's wild to say that, considering I did 200 miles across the state of Michigan in a lightning and thunderstorm and all that craziness.
Monsoon.
And to say that my fitness was gone, but I really just wasn't taking care of a lot of what I had the previous year when I trained for the XL, that I'd done the previous year when I was doing the double. Those 2 years, my training was on point both of those years, and I was really focused. And this past year, it was kind of just like, I'm riding bikes for fun. We'll see what happens. Don't really care.
What, when we speak about it, we've talked about events, we've done some of this stuff before, but what bikes are you riding? What do you find fun right now? Like,
I mean, I'm on the Loft still. I enjoy riding it. My single speed, I've been riding a ton. I'm having a blast with it. I need to clean it because I've just destroyed it out here on some of these post-snow roads that we have. But the Loft has always been good to me. I mean, it really has. I enjoy that bike a lot. And then my Niner single speed. I mean, I don't think I'll ever find a bike that I like as much as that bike. Just when you get down to it. Overall, the feel, it's a comfortable bike. I love the geometry of the bike. It is a bike that I feel like I could be on all day without a problem. There are some things that I probably need to address. At some point, it needs a new saddle. It's the same saddle it's had on since 2017. And I can definitely feel that it's a little bit wore out in some spots. Longer days are not as comfortable as they used to be. I definitely would maybe like to change some other things. I just had to replace the chain ring and the cog finally after many years of wearing them out here. And so, but it's such a low maintenance bike too. I mean, for the 7 years that I've had it, I think I've had it in the shop 3 times. I mean,
I can fully support you in that statement, considering I ride the same pretty much single speed Niner bike, and it's the only bike I've been riding. Yeah. I mean, I have 2 or 3 other bikes, but I've got a giant mountain bike, and I actually sold my Lauf, and bought another Niner steel frame to match my single speed frame that's got the SRAM drivetrain on it. So I have a geared Niner that's been on 2,
I'm gonna say, I think I've seen
3
you
rides
about 3 times.
Since April of last year.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I did back here, December, I want to say, maybe November, December, Merchant was having a sale, clearing out some old bikes to make way for some new things, and got myself a really low-end mountain bike. I hadn't had a mountain bike since I first got into gravel. I bought a mountain bike when I first got into gravel back in 2014, and actually, I think I bought that bike in 2013 because my first 100 here, DK 100, was on that in 2014, and so 2013, I bought a mountain bike, and I thought, yeah, I'll ride trails a lot. And then I just got in love with gravel, and I rarely rode trails. I'm like, I don't need this because I already have now 2 other gravel bikes, and so I sold the mountain bike. And recently, a lot of locals have been doing a lot of work to really clean up the trails, take care of them, rebuild some bridges and other things that were kind of rotted away and wore out.
Yeah.
And they've put a lot of work in. Man,
shout out to Andrew and Julie on that stuff.
yeah, and Barry as well. Barry's been out there doing it too. Barry, I was actually out there the day he was building the bridge, and I'm like, hey, buddy, I'm just going to walk across what you're building right now really quick if you don't mind. And he let me through. And
good group of people just excited to get out there and do stuff. And every community needs those people and need to build up those people.
And man, it was nice. It was something different to do. Go out and ride for an hour, but like that hour kicks my butt. Like absolutely just wears me out, because the trails just hit a little bit different. I mean,
oh yeah.
And so definitely had a lot of fun doing that. And so that's the other bike that I've been on. The big problem with being on that bike right now is I'm like, dadgum, I wish I had a more expensive, little bit nicer mountain bike than the one I have now because I'm enjoying doing
You know
this.
what they say, N+1.
Yeah, but when there's already a dozen bikes in the house, it's kind of hard to
I get that.
to get approval to buy another one without getting some papers. So, probably don't want to do that. But anyways, so that's part of what I've been up to. I mean, been doing that. Obviously, if folks follow the social media world from me, you've seen I've kind of done a lot of focus in general on my overall health. Kind of made that a priority. I just
doing like the hard 150.
75 hard, but I've been doing it for basically almost 100. I took 2 weeks off around Christmas when we went to travel. Still worked out during those days, but didn't adhere to all the rest.
You completed it the first time, took 2 weeks off, and you started it back.
Yeah. So, just taking care of the overall health. My overall health, really, when you get down to it, is crazily bad. I mean, we've talked about this before, and I don't know if I really talked about it on the show, but I mean, back when I was training for the double-double, going to the doctor, high cholesterol. Turns out it's probably genetic, but still high. Then the last time I was in, he's like, you really got to get your blood pressure under control. And my blood pressure was, at the time, right around 140 over like 98, which is not good at all. Like, you really need to be like under 120 and under 80. And so it's pretty high. Doctor was contemplating putting me on some medication for that. And so had to make some choices, tough choices, because it really meant cutting out a lot of things in life that I enjoy, especially food-wise, and really kind of focusing on that. And so I use 75 hard as a way to kind of get myself to do that. I really mixed up my workouts through cycling, through running, through going to the gym, something I really haven't done a whole lot of. And it's wild that at 44 years of age, I'm feeling better than I have in a while.
Yeah.
And so, but don't think that I'm not riding bikes still because of it. I'm definitely going to keep riding bikes. In fact, I was in the bike shop here yesterday talking with Adam Blake and was telling him that really I want to take advantage of this because it's not very often that you can drop 25 pounds off your bike. So when you can drop that kind of weight that you don't have to carry with you over 100 miles, I'm curious to see what maybe I can.
Yeah, maybe now shifting out of the hard 75 to ramp up endurance training a little, maybe?
Yeah, I'd definitely like to. I went, back here at the beginning of February, we got a nice Monday, and I went out and did a 50-miler. It was my first 50-miler since, sometime, I guess since technically the rad. I crossed 50 miles that day. But I had a great 50. It was my fourth fastest 50 miler I've ever had, which usually those don't take place in the months of February. Those are usually something that are kind of reserved for summer months. My body likes the warmer temperatures. And so the fact that I was able to go out and ride my fourth fastest 50 miler ever was kind of like, okay, that was a shocker. I wasn't really expecting that. And my hope is that will continue to translate. And continue to be something that, okay, as I go out here, I can, again, having lost the weight, not having to carry that around with me on the bike. Hopefully I can maybe go out here and do some of the things that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, and maybe crush some races. we'll see.
Fair enough, Neil. Well,
Yeah.
it seems like you've still been up to stuff.
Yeah, no, still been active. Just that's the thing is, just putting my focus in other places a little bit, but definitely still enjoying being on the bike and still enjoying being active, but not finding, like I say, as much time to maybe do things like this and sit down and chat, or do maybe some of the social media that was there in the past. So
Yeah, I get that. I guess it's for me now. What have I been up to since?
yeah, what have you been doing?
Yeah, so like everybody knows, I left the shop back in May, and shout out to them down there at Merchant Cycles. Go in and check it out. They've really redone some stuff. Adam Blake's down there, Tim Moan, Seth,
Looks
whole
great
crew.
in there.
And I'll say this much, like I've still been around there quite a bit, to the point that like we've been recording for like 20 minutes now, and I was in there then like 40 minutes ago. So
Yeah.
I was in there last night too, and trying to do cool things. And whether it's Merchant Cycles is your local shop or where not, make sure you're supporting your local bike shops. That's something that after spending 2 years in it, you don't necessarily understand what local retailers, whether it's a bike shop or a coffee shop, they depend on you in our downtowns, and they're the ones sponsoring events and things in the community. That's enough of my soapbox there. But what have I been doing? So yeah, I've always had, I mean, even Gravel Guru's been Bluestem Productions LLC. I mean, been run by, I've had it for whatever, a long time. They're the production company and whatnot, but the production company didn't do a lot of for-profit work. Actually, it was a lot of lose money work doing the show type things and whatnot. But I launched it full-time. It's my full-time employment working for myself. I have some fantastic clients out there. Not really one out there overly promoting, looking for work type thing, doing a lot of corporate style things where it's not, your wedding videos, your birthday videos, and that type of thing. But some great clients, and this summer didn't really want to talk about it, still feeling out the waters a lot. And the important thing to remember is the studio we're sitting in right now is the Gravel Guru that used to be studio. It used to be on video. I mean, we actually shot videos in here for Gravel Guru Thursday night that you'll see in the coming week or weeks on the channel. So the thing with that is this is my office every day now. I'm in the studio literally every single day. So, it's kind of like being on the bike shop and like riding bikes. A lot of times you don't want to do it when it's your full-time employment. And I think there was some more that I wasn't looking for extra video work to do.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, when you look at, I mean, you send me messages and different things. I mean, you're always editing this or shooting that. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's a wide variety of different things. So it's keeping you busy. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's keeping you busy I would say in a wide variety of different ways. I mean,
And it's fantastic. Not doing the same thing every single day, but a lot of times it's every week you're kind of reinventing yourself a little bit different,
like you say, you're doing the corporate thing sometimes, but then I mentioned earlier just jokingly, but doing basketball games too.
Yeah,
doing
we've had the
football
opportunity to do some fairly large sporting events for a company our size, doing live TV productions into a top 35 TV market in the U.S., live college sports. So, that's been a lot of fun learning the lingo and getting to do some of those things. And, things we've always done on the side quite a bit. I used to teach part of the stuff at the high school for video streaming and whatnot, but to get to do it and it's real.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. Like, all that other stuff all of a sudden felt fake. Like, now you're on TV, and maybe that's the old school me and people that just have streaming stuff or, and I just have streaming stuff at home. But, there's a difference when people can flip channels and see content you're putting out there live.
Yeah, no, like I say, it's been fun. I've been able to be involved with, 2 of those broadcasts, and
Yeah.
it was wild for me when you asked me to do it, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh crap! Like, for those that don't know, that was my original life plan. Like, I went to college. I have a degree in communications and media, television, radio stuff, and I was always super excited about doing sports television, doing sports radio. I worked in Chicago in sports radio for a little bit, and did
Sports aren't a big thing in Chicago, are they?
Nobody likes sports at all in Chicago. Then did play-by-play in college, and but I kind of put it all in. It all kind of disappeared in my mid-20s, and obviously went into ministry about that same time, and been doing that for almost 20 years, actually over 20 years of my life now at this point. And so I never really thought I would do any of that stuff again. And when you asked me, I was like, yeah, sure. Totally terrified. But now it's I know you jump back in and it comes pretty.
But I think the funny thing is you'll find out as the show goes along and some of the things we've worked on that like 3 or 4 of the people involved in Gravel Guru stuff were on those live shows too, and just because we all work together on all the time. I mean, we make things happen like that. And so that's one big facet of things I've been doing, but also gearing up to do something a little bit different this spring too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going into vegetable farming.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's become a big interest of
Is that
mine.
why you're wearing overalls right now and
Right.
boots and a hat?
I do not have the overalls on now, but there's plenty of photos of me in overalls out there. No, just something I've taken in, kind of a passion too. I've grown up on a family farm here right outside of town. I'm sure if you've ever rode bikes with me, you've heard me talk about it a lot. If you ride bikes out of Emporia, there's more than likely you've rode right past our place a lot of times. And so it's a chance to go out and produce some local food and take a passion in that paying attention to where your food comes from and whatnot. And I think there's a need in Emporia to have some more local produce options. And it's just been a journey that I've had some opportunities to take on, have some new farm equipment type deal to do it. We built a greenhouse in my backyard. Neil's probably tired of seeing those Snapchats every day of...
Especially when it's like 100 degrees in there or 80 degrees in there, but it's like negative
30
12 outside. Yeah.
So doing all that and starting to, next week I'll start seeds and transplants. And by the time Unbound comes around, there'll be about 3,500 vegetable plants in this piece of ground out there.
And for those that don't know, this started ultimately, I would say, last summer, kind of fall, really, when you got down to it. You guys basically did a
pumpkin patch.
Pumpkin patch.
Roadside pumpkin stand, really. And that's what I call year zero. That was testing the waters on, we grew about a quarter acre of pumpkins was all, and set up a roadside stand and did an honor system, little cash box or Venmo, square deposit thing there, and it worked. And our place is very fortunate. We're very close to town, so you can get out there easy, and just expanded on it. And there will be pumpkins again this fall.
Nice.
So a lot more.
Yeah, I needed to get pumpkins this year, but we never got out there because I suck. So what can I say? Not a
whatever you say about shopping local or something.
October was crazy for me because that was when I'd started the 75 hard, and I was really focused on everything.
Yeah, and I'll say the big thing about that, I get in trouble with my wife, Madeline, because if you go to our website, and we call it Cottonwood Valley Farm.
Give them a follow, Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, the socials are out there. Not a whole lot on it yet. Hasn't been a whole lot going on yet with it. But I keep using the phrase we, and she keeps going, who is this we? I think she's concerned about
Kennedy.
it. But yeah, exactly. Our daughter that's 3, it was so much fun watching her watch the pumpkins grow.
Yeah,
I mean,
I love those snaps.
she'd go out there a couple times a week with me. And, you just see her looking under the big leaves and, oh my, look at this pumpkin, and just these expressions. And so... I think that's one of the downfalls with cycling I have, is it's not real easy to be involved in it as a family activity.
You can't share it. You can't share it as easily, at least. I mean, you can ride up and down the street like you did.
Correct. I mean, I took a couple laps with her on her bike with the training wheels and stuff before I rolled out last night.
And that's cool, but, it's 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yay, fantastic.
But she's 3, and also, what do you mean I can't ride with you?
Yeah.
You're going up, and mom having to explain to her, no, you probably can't keep up yet.
Yeah, I've had to explain that to both of the kids in the past on different levels. And I mean, last year Lane did Unbound, he did the 25, but, for 25 miles, it took us 2.5 hours.
Would have taken me 2.5 hours too.
It might have, I've seen you ride bikes, so. But, last night he wouldn't have been able to keep up with us.
Yeah, we pushed last night.
Yeah,
it was good. It was a good
good
ride
for a February ride, I would say.
Anyways, that's kind of where my year's been, where it's leading up. I've got all of the stuff coming in on the farm. I'll share some of those posts at some point when there's something to see, but just exciting times. I'm in a place in life where I'm very fortunate and surrounded by supportive family and friends to, one, run my production company and that be my day-to-day source of income, but also allow me a little bit of spare time to go out and try some new things, and understanding that I might be producing a sports game on a Saturday, so my free time is now a Tuesday morning, where I don't have anything going on, and juggling a Google Calendar is my best friend to keep track of things, but fantastic time and just excited to get in here. And I think Gravel Guru going in a direction where we want to be educational, informative, but it's kind of a personal blog, kind of what are we doing?
Yeah.
Because I think jumping into our next kind of talking point is, and we want to be a little more impactful maybe on our topics. And one that's written up on our marker board in here is oversaturation.
Yeah, so I think about this, and we have already mentioned a couple times that 10 years of doing this, and you look back to 2016, which I think is when that first post on YouTube was. So you look back to 2016 and what 2016 was. That was DK just coming off of the original mud year, the real mud year, the mud year that was just chaotic and crazy out there. The event was, when you get down to it, and I'm just going to say this, it was small at that point. You had Rebecca Rush probably being the most famous person at that point to have ever come out here and toe the line, and still maybe one of the most famous people ultimately to ever come toe the line here. I mean, she's very well known throughout the cycling world. But she'd come here. But other than that, I mean, we had a small little expo that had, maybe 5 or 6 booths at most, and that had only been taking place for a very short amount of time. And there really wasn't this just abundance of information everywhere out there. If you would search things with gravel back then, because this is what I was doing a lot of times as I was looking to get into gravel and looking to gain more and more information and more knowledge. The reality is I had 2 places that it seemed like I was getting any of that information from, because I wasn't on the show at that point. So I was, one, getting the information from watching Bobby and Leland discuss and talk about things. And then I was actually also going to Bobby's Casual Cyclist blog and reading that. Occasionally maybe hopping over to Guitar Ted, and seeing what he was writing and putting out there, catching some other just little bits, odds and ends. But really, there wasn't an abundance of information. If I'd go try to find events that were taking place, it was really hard to find anything about many events that were taking place. Cause
I think you have to remember at that time, the premier publisher probably that was talking about gravel, and this should make you chuckle a little bit when you hear the name of it, was the real magazine on the scene, at least in my opinion, here in the Midwest, was Road Bike Action magazine. I'm not knocking Road Bike Action by any means there, but I mean, when the title of a magazine's Road Bike, and to think about that's where, when you made it in a magazine or a story made it, I think I did some photos for him at one point back early on, that we called it Road Bike.
But that's what we had. I mean, I don't think people realize.
Yeah. I mean, you got Guitar Ted up in Iowa. I mean,
like you said, looked at his blogs occasionally.
He's been around doing it and doing a good job.
But there was not a lot out there. And so, as we talk about kind of, I mentioned kind of maybe a little burnout, maybe a little bit of wear out that just kind of happened with COVID, 2020, a lot of different things in our worlds ultimately taking place in that time. I mean, it wasn't too long after that you and your wife brought a child into this world. I mean, I have 2 kids that I'm watching growing up and everything that's going on with that. And I mean, we're just 2 dudes that sit down and kind of share a little bit of what we've been doing. And then we look out there, and all of a sudden, about that same time, with COVID, because we're all kind of stuck inside, everybody starts recording podcasts. Everybody starts writing some blogs. Everybody starts pouring out information.
And that really happened in 2020.
And the abundance of information that is out there is really, in my opinion, is an oversaturation, because now I don't even have to search for gravel information. I just open my phone and everything, I mean, let's face it, the algorithms, the artificial intelligence, everything makes it so that I open up my phone, it knows what I want. And so whether I pull up Facebook, or whether I pull up Instagram, or I pull up any other, it just feeds me that stuff now. And it feeds me from so many different directions that I think we had both really have talked about this, not on show, but we have talked about this. It's tough to quote unquote compete and to want to keep doing when there's so much going on.
And I was actually watching another podcast this morning on the big screen in here in the studio. I was working on email and stuff, and it's a geeky podcast about social media trends and whatnot out there, and talking about kind of how the TikTok has taken over, and there's about the same amount of consumers consuming content and X amount of creators now that are new. Where the old model used to be the follower model. I mean, that's how you're listening to this podcast, is you followed us somewhere sometime, you met us. Yep. More than likely, something like that. The odds of you just stumbling into it are probably pretty slim. But the new method of just so much short form content and whatnot. But I think for my problem with the oversaturation is we've always tried to be, in my eyes, very honest, very accurate, and we have taken very few dollars from brands.
I haven't had any dollars from brands.
I've had one. I really have to think back over 10 years. We've taken one check, and by we, I mean me with the show. And that would have been going into 2019?
Yeah, somewhere around that time.
And that's full transparency. I mean, we ran a commercial in front of every show. It was Lauf Bikes.
Yeah.
And Goodberg and that whole group was running it type deal. And that's really the only corporate sponsor we've had, or corporate partner. I mean, we've taken some products that we've given away and some of that stuff, but I will also say that nothing has ever changed my opinion of anything we've ever talked about.
Yeah, no, I'm there with you, and I think what it impacts what I want to say, or what I'm going to say here, is the fact that there's so much out there, but so much of it is now based around the quote unquote influencer model, where it's sponsorships. And so the reality is, and not going to name any names out there, but your gravel cyclists that are out there that are getting sponsored are absolutely 100%, paid, compensated to be able to tell you that X tire or X this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. And if you enjoy those individuals, if you like following them, boy, you're going to adhere to those things. And I mean, I've tried some of those products, Matt. I've tried some of them, and there's a reason that some of them are not on my bikes anymore.
I think you specifically mentioned tires. I think consumables like your food, your gels, your drink mixes are another thing that falls into this category.
100%.
That the thing with every rider is not created equal.
I don't know what you're talking about, Matt. I am just as created equal as Lachlan.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Every rider is not created equal, and gravel is not created equal.
Yeah.
And this is a big thing I ran into selling tires, is I don't care how many times you read a blog saying this tire is indestructible in Colorado. Colorado gravel is not Kansas gravel.
No.
And it's sure not Flint Hills gravel. I'm sure there's some places that probably compare to what we have. I'm sure we have some places here that compare to gravel on trails or something. I don't know. Yeah. But Flint Hills gravel is not comparative. So it pained me to try to sell a pair of tires that I knew was not going to survive here. And so, the oversaturation of they can make all this, your favorite rider can ride with it. But does that mean it's the best for you? Do you ride the same way as those riders? And these are just really questions you've got to ask yourself on the consumption side of, just because it was in a cool video and all that doesn't mean that it's going to work for you.
Well, and so here's the thing, like, also for me, when it comes down to that, is that because it's become this influencer sponsored, oversaturated world, we forget that you can do it multiple ways too.
No.
Matt, so, I mean, again, the show started in 2016.
Yes.
2016 was the first time I completed what was the DK200 at the time. I'm going to tell you something, and this might scare some people that are listening right now because they've never heard that this was even possible. But I completed the 200 miles with tube tires.
No.
And they were 35s. 35s.
You rode with tubes and pie pans?
35s for 200 miles, tubes, and guess how many flats, punctures, issues I had?
7.
Zero. Zero. Now, don't get me wrong. I will go to tubeless and stayed at tubeless. I love tubeless.
So you are not standing here on February 26th saying tubes are the way to go.
No. Tubeless is so much better. I enjoy
tubeless. We have this conversation.
So
we talked about this.
So much.
We talked about this last night. I knew you were going to say this today. But tubeless is 100% the way to go. I will fight anybody on any forum that says you don't need tubeless to ride gravel in Emporia, Kansas.
Yes. Definitely here for sure.
I don't know, back to all gravel is not created equal. So I'm not going to say if you ride stuff that might be like the Katy Trail across Missouri, very limestone chat, very manicured, you could probably be just fine on tubes.
Up in Michigan was very sandy, obviously, for that 200 miles. I think if you needed to, you could probably do tubes on sand if you really wanted to.
And you could also, I'm going to throw back here to, I think it was year number 1. We had Dan Hughes in here before Unbound last year talking about winning those early years and changing tubes out as the leader of the race because you were having a flat and just hoping you made it to town on enough tubes. So you got lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, when you finished.
Well, I will say that there was definitely some luck involved. I will also say in 2017, I also did it on 35s with tubes and had 0 punctures.
So part of that is some local knowledge of knowing how to ride lines.
Riding lines, some knowledge. But what I'm saying is, if people are going to come out here, or come out to other places. I mean, there's other events that go on as well that people stress about tires. This is not the only event that people stress out about tires. And I would say, 1, don't put too much thought into it. If you have a good tire that you trust, that you know is good, that has taken care of you, that you have ridden before, that you're comfortable with how it rides, that you're comfortable with how it handles and turns, things of that nature, keep riding that tire. It's probably going to be okay. Now, are there some out there that just don't really, I would say, cut it out here in the Flint Hills?
Yeah.
Absolutely. There are some that I've seen that I just don't think I would put on my bike. But I will also say that, I would also not go up to Michigan, do coast to coast on 35s. You know, I'm not going to do Unbound either, by the way, in 35s anymore, now that I have the ability to not.
I do it on 38s.
I would, yeah. I mean,
38s that are on my single speed right now.
I would say 38s on my single speed right now, and I would 100% do it on 38s. Not a problem. I mean, you did 38s probably on your bike when we rode the 100. I would assume back in March.
42s.
You had 42s on it?
Yeah.
Okay. But I would say, you know, there's different things you can do, but I think because of this oversaturation and hearing all these different individuals telling you what you have to have, really has...
Okay, so we've dived into the oversaturation part. We've made our point clear. There's a lot of content out there.
A lot of content.
There's some content that there's not a whole lot of fact checking going into.
What's
going
fact checking?
What would you say the most overhyped category is in cycling?
I mean, I think we've already kind of covered it, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think tires is probably it. And the reason I say that is because I've ridden so many different tires out here. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, they all, for our level of cyclists, let me be very clear. I understand the pros, different things, all that. But for our level of cyclist, mid-pack, backpack, whatever, man, I've done just as well on specialized Pathfinders as I've done on Torino Zeros, Dries, Gravel Kings, Boken double crosses. I mean, I've probably ridden at least a dozen different styles of tires over the past.
I'm going to take a leap of faith on this one.
Like on 5-10 years, and just saying. But okay, leap of faith.
I will say that you are a very loyal person, and you've always supported local bike shops. Mm-hmm. And I will say this bike shop that you've supported here in town has done a very good job on independently sourcing and testing what's brought in too.
Correct.
I mean, you get on some of these forums out there, and there's some stuff that I've never heard of coming in brand-wise. Never heard of these names and whatnot. So yes, I will say tires are overhyped. I'm going to go out on a limb and say nutrition.
Really?
I will.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Look back. I hope to have this person on the podcast at some point. A Hall of Famer coming into the Gravel Hall of Fame this year, John Hobbs from Newton, Kansas, put on the death ride, I mean, 80s and 90s. And at one point, they had like 600 riders there out of Madison, Kansas.
Yeah.
Like, doing this event. And you talk about some of the nutrition that they had. You know, here we have all these packets, all these mixes, and they're on road bikes, they are on mountain bikes, they don't have gravel tires, they don't have tubeless, they don't have all this stuff, but you still got to eat. You still got to get calories in your body. And I think for me, you know...
So I know where you're going with that now, and I follow you a little bit more. For me, obviously, nutrition was a very big thing. Because
I will say, I'm very happy we have a lot of new nutrition stuff on the market.
And I think it's one of those things when it comes to nutrition, you really have to figure out what works for you. Everybody knows Tailwind has always worked for me since I've started using it back in 2016. It is absolutely my go-to. I had to experiment a whole lot when it came to the XL. I experimented a whole lot, and I found out how to fuel my body to bring it the right amount of stuff. The reason I say, though, that at least it's important to me to find what works best for you is because, man, I didn't have that in 2015, and I pulled the plug on most of my races because, for me, I couldn't do gels, man. Gels didn't work. And
I think your body's always changing, too.
Yeah.
Because Tailwind's gotten me through some really ugly days that I probably shouldn't have finished.
Yeah.
Out there, or I couldn't have finished on other stuff, whether it's solids or whatnot. But I just mean that, I'm glad it's there, but... People were completing these things without all these products.
Well, and I'll say this: when it comes to nutrition, there is almost again, and everybody wants to get in the game. I get it, but there's too many stinking options. There's so many options that it just, I think like everything else, the whether it's tires or whether it's nutrition,
bike brands,
we're all they're starting to cannibalize one another. Ultimately, because there's so many options. Nobody new can break in, but nobody can really expand a whole lot without ultimately impacting themselves. And then you get,
This is a hot take.
Okay, go.
You talk about cannibalizing the industry within itself. I mean, look at the time we started riding before the show even. How many events there were for gravel. And we could go on a year calendar and we could draw 5-10 squares on it that these are the weekends we're going to be where we're at. And you're going to be at the Super Bowl events of gravel. But with that, look at it now. Try to put a calendar together. You can be somewhere every weekend. But back then, every event kind of knew their place. They fit in. They helped all the other events fill their schedules too. To now it seems like, well, why are you going to go out there when you could do this one here?
Yeah, it's there's definitely that's another level of oversaturation that we could talk about. Obviously, we talked about the podcast area, but there are too many events, in my opinion. There just really is. And the thing is like, it's no offense to some of these guys that we've gone to their events for many times in the past, but like, either A, I have to choose to continue to go to the same event over and over and over and over and over again, riding the same roads over and over and over and over again, or experience some new places.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like what we talk about doing here. I mean, there's a lot of great events here within our area, but very few of them I want to sign up to do because I get to ride here all the time. And so if I'm going to put my dollars somewhere, I want to go see places, go see things, go experience things that I don't get to experience on a daily basis. It's not to say that I don't love, the events here. I mean, you've got Bobby's events with Flint Hills Gravel, with Rock Ridge. You've got LaGrind. Obviously, there's Unbound, but there's a lot of other ones too around the surrounding communities. I mean,
within an hour and a half.
There's one going on this weekend called Disco Gravel out in El Dorado. I mean, I think it's maybe their first or second year, but I mean, there's one popping up constantly.
And I will say, props to anybody that goes out and puts the work in to start a new one. That's not what I'm talking about here, but there's a lot of work to create a quality event and keep them going. And especially you look at some of these events that have been around 5, 10, 15 years. That's a lot of effort and a lot of probably sacrifice from these event promoters to keep the energy going.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's these guys that are doing it have, poured their hearts into it. And, I mean, there's very few races when you get down to it that have really been around a super long time. I mean, you look at the dozen-year list, and there's a handful of them around this area, but there's not a lot that have been around more than,
and
12 years. Yeah, consecutively. I mean, not counting, obviously, the COVID year that broke a lot of them up, but I mean, I remember when DK hit its 30 dozen year. I mean, that was crazy to think a dozen years, and now it's, 20 years in they've been doing the event, and there's not a lot of events that have really been able to hang around, and I'll be interested to see, as we talk, like say about them cannibalizing each other, like what the event calendar will look like here in 5 years, 10 years, because I could see some of these events that either we've grown to love or some of these events that maybe we've never heard of before that just couldn't keep going on because of just how overwhelming the calendar is.
Have we oversaturated, talking about oversaturation?
It is oversaturated.
Final thoughts on it?
Again, I just think there's so much out there that we have to make our choices, how much we want to talk about some of that stuff, because if you want Unbound content, we'll give you some probably as it gets closer.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't need to talk about a lot of the other events that are going on because you can find that information in other places, and I don't need to spend all shows.
You're probably not going to find us talking about what tire the pros are running.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm running, and that's fine,
and what I like,
and what has worked for me here before. But there's no sponsor dollars coming our way that's going to pour you any junk information either.
That can always change.
That could change. Yes.
Just send an email to matt@gravelguru.com. Sponsor money is always welcome, but it's probably not going to change our opinion. We're going to test your stuff and find out if it works here or not.
And if we don't like it,
yeah,
we probably just won't talk about it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So,
all right.
Anyways, 2025, Neil, what are you looking at moving ahead?
So I mentioned obviously some local events that are here. I really, unfortunately, can't do a whole lot of them because of how my schedule hits. I'm hoping to be able to do LaGrind. LaGrind is one that I did last year for the first time. I absolutely enjoyed getting together and do it, but I was also sick that whole week leading up to it and had probably one of the worst days I've had on the bike in a long time.
Yeah.
You saw me when I finished it. You were there at the finish line, and let's just say from the finish line to my house was one of the toughest rides as I got home. And
all I know is I laid brick pavers for a retaining wall at my parents' house that day. 2 big pallets of them. I came down on the finish line. I think I was in overalls that day down there at the finish line, and I still looked about 1,000 times fresher than you did.
Dude, that was awful.
Yeah.
And for the again, back to that. I mean, I got sick and I didn't eat anything or drink anything for over 24 hours. I mean, and that was 2 days before the event. I probably shouldn't have been on the start line, but I felt so great Friday. I felt great Saturday morning when I woke up. I'm like, I'll be fine. It's great. It's 100 miles. Whoop-de-doo. found out how hard that was. So I think I would like to at least go attempt that one again and see if I can have a little bit better day on the bike than I had, because even though I finished it, just kind of left a sour taste in the mouth.
Yeah.
Because it was not at all the day I was looking for, especially when I compare it to some of my other events last year.
And it was really weird weather that day.
It was, yeah. It was an interesting one.
A bunch of microclimates almost going around.
I mean, we were really cool almost to start off the day. The wind was a little bit wild, and then it really warmed up as the day went on. But that's there. And then... again, if you've been following and watching the social medias for me on the Minister Gravel pages, you see I've been doing a little bit of running, and I've got some friends within the running world, not just in social media.
Go ahead.
And then also some friends here at the local at ESU as well that are kind of poking and prodding, and I might be I'll be signing up probably to run the Pikes Peak half marathon ascent here.
I assume you mean you run down Pikes Peak, right?
You can do that. It's called the Pikes Peak Marathon. I can run up it and then back down it.
I'll pass.
The reality is it's basically a hike. Okay, not going to be running.
You tell yourself what you need to know.
It's going to be a walk. You get 6.5 hours to go 13.1 miles, Matt.
Straight up.
Yeah, pretty much 8,000 feet.
I've been to the top of Pikes Peak.
Never been up there before. But this for me is a little bit of a Colorado redemption. Call it that.
You hope.
I hope. We'll see. Again, I've had to be honest with myself where my fitness, where my health was back in September, and realize I probably did some of that to myself when you get down to it.
There's some miscues.
Yeah, I like I say, I think I definitely did some
Traveling
of that to
for
myself.
events is hard too in general.
Correct. And I've thought about doing this for a while, and I think I'm gonna give it a go. We'll see. I'm worried, and there's some things that I'll be bringing with me to help me as I think I ascend over. From 6,000 feet or so in Manitou all the way up to 14 plus at the top of Pikes Peak, and so hopefully see how it goes.
You've got a goal though.
And I know that when I've been goal-oriented, I wasn't really goal-oriented. And this is just, I think, a way, too, of looking at it. I wasn't goal-oriented when it came to going out to the rad last year. It was kind of like, this is cool, this is exciting, but I never really sat there and was like, I've got to push myself to get ready for this phase. Because I pushed myself ultimately to get ready for Coast to Coast. That was my focus last year. That was very much what I was centering around, and I went out, and I did it even in a freaking monsoon. I mean, terrible, terrible storm.
But good stories.
Great stories, absolutely. Again, still one of my top 3 days probably ever on a bike. But then I really kind of just slacked and didn't focus. And you're right, when I put a goal in front of me, usually I have no problem achieving it unless, my saddle breaks on my bike or something like that. Or it's, 100 degrees out with 45 mile an hour winds blowing in our face. But those are other stories for other days. So anyways, I think these are 2, at least right now, that I haven't, but I hope there's some other things. I really do. I've looked at some other events. Grassroots Gravel out in Pueblo, Colorado is one that I thought about going and doing. It's about a month after the ascent up Pikes Peak. So we'll see. I've thought many times about going out and doing Chino Gravel out in Arizona.
Yeah.
It's now been moved back to October, which is, I think, a really nice time for a gravel event in Arizona to be, compared to it used to be in May, and then it was in September for a while, I believe, and they've kind of moved it around. I thought about doing that too, so we'll see. I don't know. There's a lot of events out there. I want to go ride in other places still again. That's kind of my thing.
I think looking at your kind of outline of what you want to do, and you're very event focused. You like events. I'm very much experience. I think I don't really have anything on the schedule or the calendar yet for this year, but I want to go have fun experiences, whether that's bike packing down to Opie Lake 10 miles south of town and spending the night around a campfire, hanging out, chatting with people, or even camping at the cabin out at our farm just outside of town. Yeah. Or if a follower says, hey, man, I'm over in Missouri, I'm down in Oklahoma, I'm up in Nebraska, have you ever rode up here? I mean, I have no problem jumping in a car and going and riding some new places and trying out some new roads. I think there's going to be something coming along with another partner maybe this year where we get to go profile some routes and stuff. But I want to go ride new places, see new roads. And I'm a firm believer we live on the best gravel roads in America.
100%.
Like, you can fight me on that one, and I love it. I love being able to slip out and do the rides like we did last night. I love being able to get out in the Flint Hills in 2 hours, on a bike and back. So, but sometimes, what's in the backyard you ride all the time type deal, and just ready to go see some new places. I don't have to have events, though. I want good experiences because I want to go ride with someone that says, hey, let's go do this 30 miles. And then I also know a great restaurant or pizza pub or something to go to afterwards.
And let's be clear, the two events I've talked about right now, I'm not signed up for either of them. Now, Pikes Peak opens up Saturday. LaGrind's registration's been open for a while. LaGrind's, if it happens, in large part, it's happening because it's 0.8 mile start line from my house to the start line. I mean, so that's part of the reason why. I am with you though on the experience aspect for this year. I mean, bike packing is something you and I have talked about. The reality is I absolutely have the ability in my schedule, as you do, I think this year to, we talked about Katy Trail and going out and doing something like that.
Not necessarily hard technical riding, but a good experience.
Yeah, and I'd like to do that, just the experiences of, checking out little small towns, dropping in, going to a bakery, going to coffee shops, and just...
Casey's Pizza.
Yeah, there's so much Casey's Pizza you can have in a day. I mean, I'd like to stop in the little diners, things like that too. But I think just getting to experience some other things. I mean, last year I did the experience other things, but through events. And so I haven't put a lot on the calendar this year because I want to experience other things, but I just want to, do those little
get out and explore
day trips or multiple day trips and explore. And
with that said, I've also got no problem. If you want to come ride here, shoot us a message. Yeah. Come ride with us. We can do the same type of thing and reciprocate on that. But thank you so much for following along. If you've been here for all 10 years, thank you so much. It's going to be exciting.
10 years. Wow. Yeah. Well, and again, there will be, we were not promising anything. We don't do promises anymore. I think we've learned from doing that. But I think we'll be in here at least every now and then, getting to chat, getting to talk about what's going on, kind of share some things in life.
The spring's always easier.
Spring, weather changes. Spring is easy. Everything leading up to Unbound is a little bit easy. But then... life gets the best of us, and we're just two dudes who love bikes and love gravel and love talking about what we're doing and sharing it with you.
So thanks for following along. Got any questions for Neil? Reach out to him at Minister of Gravel on both Instagram and Facebook. Follow Gravel Guru on Instagram and Facebook as well. Follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast, and have a great day.